Hey, John Gilroy here. Last week, I attended AFCEA's Air Force IT Day. At that event, Major General Jenna Tempo stated how hard it was to connect secure systems. Today, some insights on cross-agency enterprise design specifications. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast with you, the federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guests today are Nick Pesce, he is Senior Technology Strategy Advisor, and Don Lamb, Lead Cybersecurity Engineer at MITRE, M-I-T-R-E. Everybody knows MITRE, don't they, Don? We all know MITRE.
We do.
I think, Nick, if you were to sit in the metro and say MITRE, they'd say attack framework. So most people know you for the attack framework, don't they?
Yep. When I go for bicycle rides, long distance rides, and I have a MITRE shirt on, it's amazing how many people know MITRE.
I know. No, they're very well known. Well, what we want to let people know today is something new. There's something new under the sun after all. What happens is these folks, Nick and Don, have been listening. No way. They listen to our little federal govies, technology leaders, and go, oh, what's the problem here? And they've listened, and the next step is to maybe try come up with a solution. And so, Nick, what I want to focus on today is a report that you guys came up with, kind of a heavy report. It's called Recommendations for Creating Cross-Agency Enterprise Design Specifications. So, Nick, why'd you even start this project?
John, that's a good question. So the problem we were trying to resolve is the federal government is like a loosely coupled conglomerate of companies. Over the years, agencies have developed systems in isolation with little consideration of integration across the federal government. Consequently, common capabilities like accounting systems, data catalogs are not integrated. Therefore, it takes days and weeks to manually compile data for the consolidation of the enterprise financial reports or to discover critical data for high priority reports. With the ever increasing volume of data and rapidly evolving technology, integrating capabilities across the federal government must be automated to achieve results at the speed of mission. Agencies see the value of integrating. However, the question is how. It is a very complicated issue of how to integrate across all these agencies.
So, Don, this isn't new. In fact, if you scroll on over to CISA, you find out they have something called the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative. And so they're starting with this. Is this similar? Does this contrast with that? Does this amplify that? Where does it fit in with CISA, Don?
When we talk about the Joint Defense Collaborative, it's more of operational perspective on things. So they do a lot of planning. They do a lot of TTXs, tabletop exercises, to talk about the what ifs if something were to happen. The design specifications are really part of pre-acquisition to where we're trying to do the planning. What are we going to build capability-wise and the like. The results from the tabletop exercises and the planning, those actually are an input into the design specifications because cybersecurity is one of the factors that must be considered.
Nick, my avocation is reading a history about the Middle Ages last night. And when they went in battle, they had someone who had a standard, who had some kind of a flag. And so is this the flag? Is this report? Is that what you want? Is this what you want? No, look, hey, take a look at this. This is a good way to encourage collaboration.
Yeah, it's a way of doing collaboration. Since you have multiple agencies, it's a multidimensional problem. If it was just one-on-one, which today the agencies do one-on-one connections, but that's costly if you could do one-on-one here, one-on-one there. So that process deals with how do we work across 10, 15 agencies and come up with design specifications that all agencies are happy with and can build to with their unique capabilities.
So, Don, this report was issued over the summer. What has the reaction been in the federal IT community?
There has been a lot of feedback, a lot of thumbs up. It's been reviewed by many people, both within MITRE and external too. And it's been posted on places like LinkedIn. And the feedback has been generally very positive.
Yeah, good. And so, Nick, a lot of people are listening to this podcast. They're out trimming a tree or, working on their car. Who knows what they're doing? And they may want to get this report. So where can they get this report, Nick?
John, good question. It is on MITRE.org, and you want to look for integration after next articles. And within there, you'll find this article.
Right. And so I'm going to put this in the show notes. You can go to federaltechpodcast.com, search MITRE. It's going to be right there with pictures of these two gentlemen. You can use them on your dartboard if you'd like. And download and read. I mean, I think it's important. Now, Don, I've kind of been to rodeo a few times here, and there are a lot of valid initiatives that lowlives like me want to, change in my agency. But then you get the big dogs like, Joe Smith above me, and ain't going nowhere without kind of executive buy-in. So how does one get? So Don, how does one get executive buy-in or stakeholder buy-in for this concept?
The way that you always have to do it, John, is to show benefit. Whether it's going to be a cost savings, quicker to deploy, more efficiencies within the organization. That's how you have to really show it. If you can't do that, then it is going to go nowhere. And even with that, there's always some risk because things can become yesterday's news, and they kind of go on the back burner.
Yeah. So Nick, I actually did read the report, and what I found fascinating was user story, use case, and it sounds like it's back to the beginning of this interview. Maybe shut up and listen and find out exactly what's going on, and then try to come up with some people call it a POC, or what you can call it a proof of concept, whatever you want, and then kind of maybe prove the value there. I guess is that the baby step, Nick?
So, John, you're going to get, excuse me, you're going to get the long answer. Okay, this recommendation is putting together people from across the board to come up with the requirements. And in the report, as you saw, there was this a dartboard, and it had 23 tasks. And you would work in a spiral from the outside in until you got to the design specifications that an agency could take and give their software developers. So it covers everything. Looking at strategies, each agency's strategies, their architectures, because they're all different. Their architectures are different. Their operations are different. What they do is different. So you have to take all this information in. You have to meet with all the stakeholders across the board. What's your use cases? What's your stories? What's your requirements? Or those design specifications at the end may not meet everybody's needs. You want to meet as many government agencies' needs as possible with these specifications. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I think it's really because you have to listen first, come up with practical, and apply that and show value. Don, I got a question for you. When Nick talked about a dartboard, I wrote down NODOR, leading manufacturer of dartboards. Not that I've ever used a dartboard in my hair, but they have credibility because they're well known in many whiskey bars across the United States. So what about MITRE? Okay, MITRE's not a federal agency. Why does MITRE have credibility here? I mean, oh yeah, MITRE thinks this is a good idea. Oh yeah, who are you guys? I mean, why, huh?
Well, MITRE is manages. We're not-for-profit, not-for-profit that manages several federally funded research and development centers. Oftentimes, we're embedded with with our federal agencies, so we have a good understanding, therefore, of what the challenges that they're facing. We also have presence, broadly across the U.S. government, so we understand government processes and the like. That allows us to bring whole of MITRE to solve a particular agency's problems, or in this case, enterprise problems that would affect a variety of agencies, across the board within your community, whether it's intel, whether it's government in general.
So, Nick, tough question here. So, would the Air Force show their dirty laundry easier to you guys or to a for-profit company? I mean, this seems like Don is saying is, look, we work with many different, and we're a nonprofit. And does that maybe break down some barriers to, not every agency wants to share some problems they have.
So, John, there's another good question. Okay, so yes, we are a collection of data across all the agencies. We do not share data. We may share the data within MITRE, but we will not share it outside unless the sponsor who we generated that work for tells us, yeah, you can share it. Otherwise, we don't share it. Otherwise, we're not a trusted advisor. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Good. So, Don, another story from me. I was walking through Georgetown one day, and they have like these fancy shops there, and they have like a men's suit shop, and it said bespoke suits. Then I went home and told my wife, and I said, "Hey, what brand is that? Bespoke." She said, "It's not a brand, you idiot. It's a custom-made suit." Oh, so that's what it is. So a tailor makes a custom-made suit. Good, good, good. So let's apply this to this discussion today. I was at the MITRE website, and they talked about this report, and they talked about tailoring, tailoring this framework for different agencies. And so I guess that is I can call it a framework, whatever you want to call it. So Nick, is that one of the strengths? Is it can be a bespoke enterprise system?
Yes, it can be modified based on the capability you're trying to, based on the capability you're trying to design specifications for, you can customize it. So like for data catalog, you want to bring in data catalog experts. Of course, this is very high level, but financial, you'll bring in different people. You may do different processes. You still do a lot of the steps, but you may customize them as needed.
Yeah. So Don, the next question is going to be about Croatia. Can you handle it?
Let's go ahead and bring it on.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a distance swimmer, and he goes to Croatia every summer. He trains. And he tells me that many of the languages in the former Yugoslavia are very similar, Slovenian, Croatian, but there's different words that they use. And so I'm thinking the federal government, I was at the Air Force event last week. There's going to be an Army event. I'm sure there's going to be a Space Force event. Now, they may use different terminology. And I'll tell you right now, in the satellite and space world, when they see the word exquisite, it's got nothing to do with a diamond ring. It means something for a satellite. And so there's different vocabulary and lexicon. So is this part and parcel of the whole process, Don, of getting that lexicon of no, Nick, what do you mean by so this definition seems to be integral part of it, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It does.
Yeah, the lexicon is one of the challenges, and one of the nice things about this process is as you get into designing and building these specifications, you have stakeholders from the different organizations represented. And so that's one way to overcome that lexicon is, the project itself will have one that accounts for the differences, and everybody then becomes, familiar with talking the same language and the like. So, yeah.
So, Nick, I was talking to a rocket scientist once, and he said he had this rocket put a bunch of the things on it. And I said, you can hitchhike then. He goes, no, we say rideshare. They don't say hitchhike. They say, even in spite of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they say ride share. It's a very specific terminology. So I think lexicon's important. But I think what's more important is understanding your current situation, your context. And right here, December, January 2025, I think reasonable statement could be there's going to be some changes. I think that's a reasonable statement. And so, Nick, how you can handle it? Are you going to get different objections with new administration, same objections, or is this going to be established federal professionals who are going to understand this, or is this going to have to adopt and change for you to make people understand what this framework is all about? So how's it going to handle that, Nick, all these changes?
So, John, I think we are ahead of the curve here. We have developed the processes to reduce costs, meet mission needs, which are hard to do today, with manual processes. Trying to integrate stuff across multiple agencies could take days and weeks. So I think we're ahead of the curve. I think that if this gets to the right people, this information, I think the government, the new administration will want us to implement, or want the government to implement, not MITRE. But once this is implemented, and they have the processes in place, it's going to be very easy to keep doing, and people would understand it.
So, Don, the name of this report we're discussing focuses on enterprise design specifications across agency. We know that. There is an author by the name of Peter Wyner, Weiner, and he wrote an article called "The 6 Deadly Sins of Enterprise Architecture." This is bringing this to life, And he talks about, on one hand, you just embrace a certain type of a framework like it's a cult, or You ignore it and just do your own thing. And so we have these different, I guess human beings are the same, you know? It's either one extreme or the other. It's hard to get some kind of a middle road here. And so what about, you know, open architecture framework and this framework you're recommending, and how does it all fit in? And what about compliance?
Ooh, that's kind of a tough one.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna reach out to my colleague Nick to give some assistance here.
Well, the six deadly sins. Maybe he's a religious guy. He can tell us.
So John, let's start from the beginning, right? Let me give you two definitions, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
So we have local enterprise, right? That is an agency. They have their own enterprise. They have their own architecture operations. We went through that. Then there's the broad enterprise, right? And that's what we're going after, is the integration across them. So when it comes to the six deadly sins of enterprise architecture, I think it's valid. And I think the author is focusing on the one agency perspective of an enterprise, right? Everything he says, I agree with. But from our perspective, we're at a little different level. We're trying to figure out, how do you integrate these things? So here we have the federal government again, loosely coupled conglomerate. They do things manually today. So why do we need these design specifications? One example, and I mentioned this earlier, is, agencies have one or multiple data catalogs. That's an example, right? Each data catalog has data records about unique data for their organization. Today, there is limited integration between all of these various data catalogs. Therefore, an analyst may have to manually search through several data catalogs. He's got to figure out where they are first and how to get into them, and then discover the information related to a study. With standard enterprise data design specifications, and each agency can develop the interfaces that will make it easy for an analyst. Now he can only has to do one search, and he'll get the response across all the agencies instead of manually going through everywhere. So you can see where we're going and how we're a little different when it comes to our enterprise, because we're looking from the global perspective.
Yeah.
The local is the local. If they do it right or wrong, not our concern. We're one step above.
Yeah. So Don, is this a suggestion for enterprise design? Is it just for the intelligence community, or is there limit to that, or is that where we should start, or is this where the problem was discovered?
This is more, I would say, where the problem was discovered. But this process or this methodology can be employed to any community of agencies, that have shared common goals, objectives, have a requirement for common services, those types of things. So it's not unique to the Intel. It can be employed across the U.S. government.
And Nick, we're not wagging our finger at federal agencies. Many times these are unintended structural barriers. I mean, many times over 20 years, you may get one administration that says A, B, and C, and you comply. And the next administration may see D, G, and E, and you comply. And then all of a sudden you look back and go, well, sometimes these are self-limiting, and maybe it takes an outsider, a MITRE, to come in from 40,000 feet and go, well, look here, look at this map. It's just, it seems, because I've seen this happen in regular commercial organizations, especially the large organizations, where new CEOs come in and want to make their imprint, and things change, and all of a sudden then they get crossed over. And so we're not pointing any fingers here. We're just saying, look, this has happened over the years, and this is one way to get out of this mess.
That's right. John, there's another issue. The other issue is that, like you're saying, you have an organization, has a mission, they have to build a system, they're being directed to build a system. And they also want to do integration. But the question is, how? We don't have the processes in place. So for them to try to do it would be costly, time-consuming. As a result, even though they want to, it never happens because there is no way to do it. So that's what has to change, and hopefully these processes would help.
Yeah. So Don, this implementation should be done by a federal contractor, should be done by MITRE, should be done by employees of the federal aid. So where did the hard work start? Who does the hard work in this part, Don?
Within our process, we have a role called the independent advisor, And that independent advisor can be whoever the government wants to put in that position. It could be an FFRDC like MITRE. It could be a trusted contractor, but it's somebody there that can kind of orchestrate the process as as these teams are working together to create the design specifications.
Sean, let me add a little more to that.
Yep.
So one of the roles is an independent advisor, but I think you were getting at something else. There are different levels of groups that have to be involved to make this happen. And one of them, the lower group, is the specification design team. What we're saying is all the key roles in that team has to be government. It has to be government, or it has to be government employee, military service person. It cannot be a contractor. Those key roles have to be government. And that we're saying from the top down, all the key roles are government. And then the independent advisor can be anyone.
So Don, here's my last of my bad joke stories here. In October, I drove through rural Ohio, and I was interviewing a professor at Ohio State and took the long way home. Now, when you drive in rural areas in Ohio, any place, you inevitably see dilapidated farmhouses, and those silers are still there, baby. They ain't going nowhere. It's what you see. And so I look at the federal government and go, yeah, we can check, but those silos are still going to be there. So Don, is this more a farm analogy? It's hard to, I guess what you're trying to do is allow those silos to exist, Don, and then just let them share corn or share information, huh?
Well, what we want to be able to do is allow organizations to really share the information that they need in order to accomplish their missions. Over time, one would hope that those silos will ultimately come down, but that's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that's going to take time, and in the meantime, be able to provide the ability to share they share that corn, so to speak, so that everybody gets fed.
Well, Nick, I'm betting on the silos being around in 50 years. What do you? I think human beings. What do you think, Dick? Think it's going to actually happen?
I think either they're going to happen by planning, or it's going to happen by a fire drill. The government is good with responding to fire drills. I'm hoping in this case they will plan this out and do it now. And then in 50 years, they won't even need our processes because everybody will be connecting and interconnecting correctly, and it will no longer have stovepipes.
Well, yeah, we'll have to see what happens. And I'm really curious. We should come back in middle of summer and say, well, been a lot of changes in the government. You have this, tell us what happened, how it has been accepted, has been debated, or how people have implemented or not implemented. I mean, there could be, I'm trying to predict the next 6 months out. Good luck. Maybe 6 weeks. Hey, it's going to be cold. Maybe that's what we can do here, huh? Either one of you gentlemen want to jump in the fray and look in the crystal ball and tell me exactly what's going to happen in the next year, the federal government. You want to jump in, Don or Nick? Who's going to be that crazy?
Well, I know we have a new administration coming in, and we've already seen some themes. Dodge is one thing that's been mentioned quite a bit, government efficiencies. And one of the things that our process really does is it enables people to become more effective, more efficient, whether you adopt everything or whether you adopt parts of it. So I think that what we're proposing is going to help support some of those efficiencies that I think the new administration is going to be looking for.
Nick, you want to be brave and jump in?
Yeah, there's several things. Don's right. I mean, the government's always concerned about reducing costs. This is one of them. The other thing is response time is going to be a lot quicker. Productivity is going down. The analyst is going to spend less time wasting time trying to find things and more on doing the analytics. And the last thing we haven't really mentioned here, and I'm going to mention it, is that we have to deal with our adversaries. They're going to challenge us. They're challenging us. We don't have hours anymore to make decisions. We have to do it in minutes. And this is going to help us get there. We may be behind the ball, a little behind the 8 ball here. We should have had this in place earlier.
And I'm going to give my bold prediction. Commanders in the Super Bowl. Go on with that. Okay. We'll talk to you guys in the summer when we can wear T-shirts and sit outside in Caboose Brewing and do this discussion again. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guests, Nick Pesce, Senior Technology Strategy Advisor, and Don Lamb, Lead Cybersecurity Engineer at MITRE.